I'm delighted to say that we're moving on to rugby, and I'm thrilled to have our next guest with us. Pat Lamb, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, good morning. Good. Djurgård.
The Smorgwich. Do you know what? Actually, it's great you bring that up straight off the bat, because when the whole event happened at the very start, I was thinking about the conversations that we've had over the years about how important it is for you and your team to welcome each other in a formal way every day. And the handshake and the multi-part handshake that you had when you were at Connacht was this kind of thing that we all fully understood, where you were talking about the 5 counties. What are you going to do now when all of a sudden your players aren't allowed to touch each other?
Yeah, we have a Bristol handshake as well, but I think the handshake's only a symbol of the actual connection. You know, you can still connect. You know, the boys do. I can see them when they're coming in. We're in it at the moment for stage 1 training. You can see the boys all doing the signs and, you know, all of this sort of stuff. But it's more about the connection, you know, getting eye-to-eye contact, saying good morning to each other. Although social distancing is still there at the moment, the handshake was the purpose of it is to connect, and that's still going on, which is fantastic.
Yeah, because it did seem like it was an important connection, and that actually the whole culture of a team bonding from every second they're together is something that they carry out onto the field. It was a signifier and a symbol more than the actual specific physicality, I suspect.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, you know, the GAA, you know, these guys, they do it all the time in the sense of that connection, because they're from that hometown, they're from that county. It's easy to motivate yourself because I'm going to represent Galway or Mayo, Roscommon, Dublin, you know, whichever county it is in professional sport, because we come from all over the world or all over the country. I was the same in Ireland. You know, I had boys from Dublin, you know, playing or Cork or Limerick. It was important that not only we connect as a group so that we could go out, but we also need to connect with the community so that guys, when you get right down to, you know, games that really matter and everything's on the line, that what's going to push you that extra edge, you know, the guys around you and the people you represent. So, you know, and in a season, it changes every year. Every year, the team won't be the same. There's always going to be people coming and going. So you have to accelerate it. So put a huge emphasis on the one-on-ones again to make sure, you know, if you're going to come into, you know, the Connacht team or the Bristol Bears team, you know, you have to be someone who's brave enough to connect. Because if you connect, you'll get all the benefit for yourself and your goals, but certainly the team will and certainly the community will.
Pat, in terms of how odd the whole return to play is, what's that actually like at the moment, and how confident are you that we're going to see Premiership rugby back on the schedule that we're kind of, I'm uncertain of exactly when that schedule is, but at some point in August?
Yeah, no, it's on track at the moment. We've got a big meeting next Tuesday to go to stage 2. I think all the directors of rugby and medical staff have been involved with PRL, the RFU, even to get to stage 1. I think the important thing, which, you know, was most is get a date. Once you set a date, and it's great, I see the Pro 14 have set a date. Once you set a date, it forces everybody to hurry up and get sorted. And, you know, if there's no date, people can take their time. I'll get that done later. But suddenly big meetings have been held. We're in stage 1. This is our 2nd week at the moment, and it's going really well. So it's a long day for the coaching and management staff. You know, we've got to, obviously with people on furlough, there's a limited staff, but you're pretty much out on that field from 7:30. You're not coming off till 3:30, because normally you do one group and they all go, but they come in groups of 6s. Yeah, you get a lot of work done. It's about having a plan, understanding, read the minimum guidelines or the operating guidelines. And, you know, and that's what I always said when I was at Connacht, same when I'm at Bristol, is I've got to have good staff, and I've got fantastic staff here. So we're able to sit down, look at it. We put all the plans. Everyone's got their areas. You know, we got all our PPE equipment was ready. Big Junior Paramore looks very scary at the moment. You know, in his PPE gear and his mask, and he wipes the gear down after every group goes by. So it's it's just become a bit of the norm, but it's all based on the motivation, determination to get back ASAP. And at the moment, it's looking, you know, provided there's no second wave or anything, it's looking good to start mid-August.
Pat, you look pretty relaxed, and you're rocking the lockdown beard there as well. But I just wonder how difficult the last 12 weeks have been, because I know you've had to let some players go. You can't really plan for the addition of players because you're not sure or otherwise the financial situation may be. Premiership Rugby doesn't seem to have been very clear on the signals it's putting out there as to what the return will be like. There seems to have been a bit of a row over the fact that they brought in PwC to help them on a consultation basis to get themselves back in a position where they can bring play back. I mean, has the last, say, 4 to 8 weeks in particular been particularly stressful?
From a personal view, it's been great with family time and so forth, but also planning, reflection, and reflecting and reviewing, and feel excited where we're going to go. When you talk about the players, I mean, the first thing I did once I knew we couldn't get back together, when I arrived, it was the same. It kind of want to make sure that we honour our leavers. So we did a virtual one online. It was about 2-3 hours. It was awesome. We had guys crying. Pretty emotional as we were able to put up some slides and clips of every single one of our leavers as a thank you. And then they also know we're welcoming them all back to do the jersey presentation once the season finishes. They'll all come back wherever they are, and we'll have a good night together. Hopefully social distancing is sorted by then. So that was ticking that box, and it was an important box to tick. And then obviously the new players have come in: Kyle Sinclair, Mitch Eadie, Ben Earl, and Max Malins, the Saracens, Chris Cook. They've all arrived. Semir Draja flies in today, which is great. So they've transitioned nicely into the group as well, and the boys are fantastic through the WhatsApp group. Guys have already caught up with them. And then as far as the bigger picture goes, well, I mean, we're blessed. I mean, we've got a fantastic owner, obviously, in Steve Lansdowne, who I would say, if the club was like it was 3 years ago, I wouldn't be so confident that would still be going, where he's 100% determined that, we're all going back to full salaries at some stage, when the time's right, while other clubs, are struggling and making cuts, which they need to do. That's fine. But I think the biggest thing here is that, what Steve and Chris Boy, our chairman, fought for was the autonomy to look after your own. So instead of being a collective that everyone's going to take pay cuts, everyone's going to, the salary cap, although they signed up for the salary cap, it was on the basis that every club had the autonomy to treat their own staff the way they do. And, one thing he always said throughout his business, he has always been 100% is always honoured his contracts. So we're in a fortunate place to all the players and staff at Bristol Bears that we have that sort of support. I think some of the questions that have been asked now have been forced on people. They should have been asked a while ago. I always believe, and we showed it at Connacht. We had, we knew our budget was nowhere near the other 3 provinces, but it's more like, okay, well, what do we got? It's the plan, it's the model, it's not spending. And I think people have overspent what they can afford just because they want the victory, or they want, so I always think if you're in the situation you are, look at the people who made those decisions. If we go back to the salary cap, if we go over the salary cap, that's going to be my responsibility and Mark Tainton, no one else's. There's a lot of things going around, but, I'm always around, I'm half full, glass is half full. I'm excited. And the group have been, well looked after, and we're in a good place.
I've been using this line a little bit recently, but David McWilliams, the economist, always had the line about whenever the tide goes out, you get to see who's been swimming naked, and he's essentially talking about recessions, but you also get to see who has a boat that's properly been cleaned down and well hulled and is floating properly. And it seems like certainly the conversations that you've been having with everybody since you got there was that you want this to be run properly. And you've talked openly about the salary cap and how you were under it, and how it was one of your obsessions was to make sure that the club was never near the salary cap, so that you would have some wiggle room when the tide goes out. The tide is out at the moment, and we are getting to see which of the English clubs are well run. So at the time, it might not have seemed like it was a fair game, and it turned out it wasn't. But you were still playing by the rules with the long-term ambition of making sure that whatever was coming down the road, you were going to be able to stand over your decisions as somebody responsible for the salary cap.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the model that I've used here at Bristol Bears is exactly the same model used at Connacht. So, you work out what is your budget, what do you have, and you can't go over it. And had a really good accountant who set that system up for me. So I'm not an accountant, but all I know is that if I add a bit here, that's going to change this number here. So it's really easy. If an agent says, another 5,000, 10,000, we'll get the deal done, I look down, no, I can't. So to take it or leave it or get the next guy, But I think the big thing, and people talked about the salary cap, and we started signing quality players. Now, these players did a lot of homework on. However, if you look at it, I've only got 7 players coming in next season. I've got 19 going out, and I brought 3 local boys from the academy have now got senior contracts, long-term contracts, and I've now got another 12 integrated academy. So people look at, how can they afford that? Well, hold on, 19, do the maths, 19 gone out, only 7 come in, and the rest are coming through the academy, which is exactly what we wanted and what we had to kind of bring the guys through. And and spend the money wisely. When I arrived there, money was spent all over the place crazily on players who were, injured, who weren't number 1 or 2. And I was thinking, how are we paying this guy this amount of money? So it was a massive tidy up job to bring the model. And people think, oh, yeah, you got Steve Lansdowne, billionaire. We don't actually have Steve's billions. We probably pay, we only have the salary cap. What we do have in Steve is security for times like this. But the trust that I built up with Steve is that in the 3 years I've been here, the amount of money that Steve's had to input has actually gone down pre-pandemic, obviously, but the bills are still going up. So hold on, how does that work? Record season ticket holders, record crowds. We've sold out the Ashton Gate many times. The boys work in the community. The investment of everybody getting behind our sponsors, more sponsors. So the revenue is exactly, so the model now, as Steve can see, we were tracking perfectly because we had a 5-year plan. And part of that plan, as well as not being reliant on anyone on the field or off the field, that if someone leaves, they go, that's fine. If I leave, someone steps in, we got a structure. It was exactly the same with Steve Lansdowne, that, we want to get to a point where Steve's not having to, the club becomes self-sustainable and Steve's not having to fork out more and more for us. And that model was working for 3 years. And what we are fortunate is that that's built the trust. So when the pandemic hit, Steve's trust has backed us up by support he's given us through it.
Pat, most of what you're talking about there has almost nothing to do with coaching, and yet at the same time you can't be a coach who's free to inspire your team to play a style of rugby or a brand of rugby that you want them to, unless you've got all this stuff sorted out. It's that hierarchy of needs that Jim Gavin always talks about. And I'm interested in when you realise that to be the best rugby coach you can be, you also have to be a businessman and a bit of an entrepreneur and somebody who does understand what your accountant set up for you and who is a good accountant and how to trust that person to make sure that this system is going to stand up to whatever rigours it needs to.
Yeah, well, I learned along the way when I got sacked from the Blues it's all very well what I did with the team. I had no control of the organisation, whereas everyone has to come under the same vision, same culture, same, the way we do things has to encapsulate everything. So when I came to Connacht, when I was involved there, I made sure that, it needed to told the board there that it needed to be everybody. But the issue I had, even though I wasn't director of rugby, I was head coach. I put a clause in my contract that no director of rugby comes ahead because coaching is my passion. I'm not a director. I'm a director of rugby who's on the field, who does a lot of the coaching. I run team attack, team defence, and the biggest issue that I had is if you do that and you have someone above you controlling all of these things, it won't work. And likewise, I can do all this, but then I wouldn't be doing a job I love, which is my coaching. So when I came here, I said to Steve, and the issue too, it was difficult. I was answering to a CEO, and that made things more difficult too, because I find CEOs can be difficult because of the basis that they have no personal investment in the place. And what happens is they can easily get a new job next week, whereas the owners, they're fully invested because it's their money. Coaches are fully invested because we're determined on the results, so we're fully invested. So when I got here, I said to Steve, if I come here, Steve and Chris Boyd, the chairman, I said, if you want me to come here, I only want to answer to you two guys. I do not want to answer, because I'll show you the plan if you believe it. And that's I am in a dream job where I laid out the plan and they've given me full responsibility to make it happen. And so, as far as recruiting of staff and players, as far as the group that we got, but I have accountability, and that's the plan. So it's easy when I put the plan in and Steve signed it off, and but he's loving it because we're ticking all the boxes that are going along. The culture now of the place is whether you're the groundsman, whether you're the CEO, whether you're anybody, any player in the team, everyone comes under the same umbrella, and that to me is the key for success that I've learned from my experiences. Because again, the admin people can look at the team when we're going really well. Oh, we look how well we're doing, but when the team is struggling, I'm not sure what they're doing over there, but our area is good. Our commercial department, our budgets, but it's like, no, what I made very clear here, if the commercial team succeed, we all succeed. If the team succeed, we all succeed, and if we fail, we all fail in as well. So everyone knows there's performance and there's relationship, and I put the same acid on everyone in this organization as I have. If I don't perform, I lose my job. You don't perform, you lose your job as well. It has to be high performance.
You mentioned results there, and obviously everything from the ground up is incredibly important, and that's sort of how you try to go about your business at Connacht. But the fact is, if the senior team aren't getting results, or if you're struggling to avoid relegation, you probably won't be in that job for very long. That's just the way the business goes. You're third in the table at the moment. I'm just wondering where your ambitions are now in comparison to what your objectives were at the start of the season, because I suspect, having gone where no Connacht team had gone before and winning a championship, this surely must be in your mind at the moment, because a good finish to the regular season, you're in the playoffs. There's no Saracens to deal with. You've already run Exeter very close earlier in the season at Sandy Park. I mean, are you in a position where you better than run them close, beat them? So if you're in a position now, are you telling your players that on the resumption, we are planning on winning the Premiership? Is that where you are now? Because they would be two of the most unfashionable clubs to win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, it's the same thing I arrived at Bristol when I arrived at Connacht. I mean, everyone was telling me, we've got to get mid-table and so forth. But I said, fellas, it's not about winning the Pro 14 or Pro 12 at the time. It's about being in Champions Cup. Let's go higher than that, and then let's see what happens. So I remember I talked about Champions Cup. I talked about players playing for Ireland. I talked about Indigenous players coming through. I mean, the photo behind me, the reason it sits up there is one of the season ticket holders gave me a painting of the 5 boys who played for Ireland in a Six Nations game on the field at the same time. Unheard of, and that's what I said, is that when I arrived here, I said, fellas, they all talked about, we've got to get survival, got to get promoted first, because when I arrived here, they got relegated, and then they talked about survival. I said, no, Champions Cup. I want to be the most dominant team in Europe, in the Northern Hemisphere. All right. There's no reason why we can't, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen without a plan and without some serious hard work and the right people. And that's so, I believe that when I arrived here, we aspired to that. And now I genuinely believe that, what we've built as far as our game, as far as our culture, as far as our leadership. I mean, our leadership is similar to when I arrived at Connacht. I was like, geez, who's going to be captain? Yeah, you all know Pat Lam didn't pick a captain his first year because I didn't know who were the leaders. Genuine leaders, until John Muldoon surfaced. I mean, I remember, I know Moles talked about it. I did think, I don't know if Moles is 7 when I first met him. Wasn't sure how long his future was going to be. And obviously now he's with me. And he ended up being a great player and a great leader. But that's what it's like here. Now I've got a really good leadership team. So while we aspired for it now, I now believe we're in a position with the team is that there's no reason, our expectations are, there's no reason why we shouldn't be going to get trophies. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we're certainly in a much stronger place from when I arrived here and inherited the group that I inherited, and the changes that we've made. I feel really blessed by the work that everyone in the whole organisation has done. It's been a tremendous team effort to get us to here, but now we've got to go and win trophies.
One of the unbelievably exciting things about Connacht was their style of play, and I think that really helped to bring everybody along with you, because all of a sudden the neutrals were like, I'm going to watch this team because when they get the ball, they're going to be really brave with it. Obviously, the skill level is something that they've clearly worked on, and they're not going to be stupid with it, but they are definitely going to, if there's an opportunity to attack from deep, they're going to go for it. Has your style evolved at Bristol? The Premiership seems like a far more attritional and physical league. Did that cause a rethink in any way, or how has your style evolved and changed?
No, the vision is exactly the same of the way I want to play. And if anything, you just have to. I always smile when I read people talk about our game. You just have to look this year. They did a highlights of all our tries this year, and it's unreal some of the tries that we scored and the skill level. And you just got to go back before I arrived and the way they used to play. But it's the way people are talking about it reminded me of what people said in Connacht. Now, the process of getting to where I want to get to, is where I'm not, my game plan is not about running everything, all right? It is about being comfortable to play whatever it takes to win a game. And there's lots of different ways, whether it's pouring down with rain or the wind in Gilroy, or it's, beautiful sunshine, whatever it is that we know how to win. So you have to build it. But the number one thing I did at Connacht and at Bristol was the take away the fear. How do you take away the fear? Is that you got to be able to keep the ball because, players we're used to in their 22, we kick this ball. But I'm always like, well, hold on. If it's on to go and they're all standing back, why should we go? Actually, we can't pass the ball left to right. Well, our props can't pass. Okay, well, I need good staff. Let's start training the boys. Let's get the skill, but taking away the fear, and then you build. It's easy to start with a kicking game. Let's go kick, and then eventually, we've got to run. Oh, hold on, we've got no skills. So I always work from the hardest part first, which is the keeping the ball and the skill level, and we put a massive emphasis on that, like we have here. And then you can add all the different components. So that's why it's a 5-year plan. And 3 years down now, the team is a lot more complete than it was at the first year. Similar to when Connacht the first year we ran everything, but we got to a point where we were really comfortable in relationships first and foremost, comfortable in our skill level, and then comfortable in our knowledge of the Connacht way and now the Bristol way. Now, it doesn't, but if you can lose it the moment you stop working it. So every day, each training, each day has to be tougher and better than the day before. And if players don't step up, obviously they know. You put these vision and you put the plan and what the expectations are really clearly at the beginning. If people don't step up, they know that. I've let some really good people go because ultimately I need more. And as I said, if we're going to be the most dominant team in Europe or be where we want to get to, I'm going to need people who are hungry. We all saw The Last Dance. I need people like Michael Jordan, that they're determined. And when I talk about like Michael Jordan, I mean like his determination and to be the best. That's what we're after.
You need your Steve Kerrs and Scottie Pippens as well, though.
Yeah, it was without doubt. But to me, they're the same as Michael Jordan. Because at the end of the day, you had someone pushing, they could have walked away. But what did they do? They kept going. Steve Kerr, as you said, got punched by Michael Jordan. He punched him back. So to me, they had the same thing that Michael Jordan had. Michael Jordan pushed there, they went. They pushed, they went. Not sometimes some people push. Oh, I don't really want to do that. That's too hard, and then they walk away. There's no doubt there's players in there, but the Steve Kerrs and the Scottie Pippens and all of these guys, everyone benefited because Michael pushed it another level and they took it up, and that's why the boys loved it. And it was great to see because that's the era I grew up in, and it was pretty ruthless. You either you hardened up and you got on with it, or you were kicked out the other end. And obviously it's a different type of player now, but it's great for them to see it because they're like, wow. So, but you don't have to do it exactly that way. It's more the mindset that I'm not satisfied with this, that I'm going to get to here. Michael Jordan was not the same player. He had the talent when he first started basketball to what he ended. He had to work for that, and that's what we're talking about.
We do a lot of stuff.
Try and be a nice person along the way.
Well, that's the thing. Well, I was going to ask that because, a lot of modern players wouldn't take what Michael Jordan was giving them. It's the whole Roy Keane. We've obviously seen that recently. There's this mad backlash. Roy Keane can never be a manager again because he would talk to players like that in the dressing room and they wouldn't play for him. And there's definitely an element of truth in that.
Oh, without a doubt. But it's more the mindset of each individual. Like I always say, the greatest gift that you can give your team is improve yourself. If you can improve yourself every time, then collective. And I got asked that at Connacht. I remember very clearly the same press conference at Connacht. I remember it, and the same at Bristol. All right, Pat, how are you going to get Bristol to be where it is? How are you going to get Connacht? I said, really easy. I said, individuals have to get better. If we all aim to improve ourselves and get better, collectively, we get stronger. And the job, my role in that is to oversee, to ask the questions. And people won't get better. The greatest tool I always said they have is their self-awareness. We all know you cannot help an alcoholic unless they know and they acknowledge they're an alcoholic. You can't help any player go another level if they don't have any self-awareness. So asking questions is massive. Like I used to say all the time in interviews, players would say, how do you think I played? And I said, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think you played? 10's your best game ever. Oh, I was only a 5. Why is it a 5? Well, I missed a couple of tackles. Well, in relation to what we coach, what happened on my feet, I was too far away. So what are you going to do this week? Your skills plan. I'll do some tracking with Mo this week. Good, excellent. So what have we done? We've asked the question. He realises it wasn't his best game. He realises the reason why. He realises why he made those mistakes. Now he put it into his plan, and now he's taking complete ownership of it. And I can look out the window, and I'm watching them doing their skills plan because they've taken ownership of it, and they're getting better. And then our team gets better. Suddenly our team defence gets better. Like someone asked me the other day about our team defence. I was going through it, and I said, where do you think your weakness is, your team defence? I said, the players. I said, the reason we get better is because the players continue to get better, but as they become better defenders, as in there's good tacklers, but defenders in the system. So, again, that's what I love about this game. It's the best game ever. It's the best team sport in my view. I believe it is because, nothing I can achieve or anyone in the group can achieve without people getting better.
I know, look, you've got to go, but you've been great with your time. One last question. We do loads of stuff with Stuart Lancaster here. We have a podcast series on leadership, and we've talked to him in depth about what happened with the England job. And it sounds very similar in a way to the reverse of what happened to you when you were talking about the Blues. It was like you end up having responsibility for one aspect. He ended up being responsible for everything and not doing enough coaching on the field. Listening to you, it sounds like you've got that balance perfectly right, where you've got the unbelievable responsibility and time to work on the attack and defence, while at the same time making sure that the contractual situation of the players is sorted out as well. All of this is leading me to the question where the skill set that you've acquired is perfect for international rugby as well. Is that something that is on your horizon after your 5-year plan is fulfilled? Is that something that is part of your ambitions in the future?
Well, I realised when I got sacked from the Blues that, I used to think, all right, I've gone from NPC, the Auckland team, to the Blues. Now, hopefully the All Blacks one day, international rugby. Obviously, my first coaching job was Scotland with Ian McGeechan, so I learnt a lot there. I did the Pacific Islanders, so I got a touch of what it looks like. But what I quickly realised, hold on, it's like a school. When I'm a teacher, which school should I go to? It's about where I get where I'm able to do what I need to do, and there's clarity. So I said, I won't do a job unless there's clarity. So if I got asked, if someone said to me, oh, look, Pat, would you do the Irish job, or would you do the English job, or the New Zealand job, or Welsh job? First thing I said, well, hold on, what's your vision? And that's one thing I used to say about Irish rugby that I did struggle with. It was about getting to a semi-final World Cup. I'm like, man, for me, it's win the World Cup. There's no reason whatsoever. Set the goal high, but get a plan and work to it. And I always say, the moment you start thinking like a champion, you start talking like a champion, you start behaving and training like a champion, the better chance you're going to become a champion. Now, it's not guaranteed because there's a lot of hard work. But for me, if I was coaching Ireland, I'd say, right, all right, we're going to be number one in the world and win a World Cup. All right, now we take the plan. What does the plan look like? Then we get the right people. Then we get the right players. Then we get the right facilities. Then we make sure that the budget can line up to what we need to do. And if it doesn't, well, how do we get our budget? How do we prove? Obviously, the performance. So there's a model there to use. But the most important thing I need to know is who am I answering to? Because that's where I've always found there's a lot of people with agendas in this professional game. And I'm so blessed. So at the moment, I'm like, well, why would I leave the job I'm here at the moment? Obviously, with Steve and Chris give me so much, having so much trust in what I do, that and they know that now that I'm following a plan. It's not Pat Lamb doing his own thing. It's exactly what I've said. And as Steve, whenever I present stuff to Steve, and he goes, well, it's exactly like you said. That's what's happened. He goes, great, just ticks it off like that. And so if I need a player and it fits in the budget, Steve's like, just make it happen. And I remember talking about Semi Radraja. Said, Steve, I'm coming to you because we have a marquee spot about Semi Radraja. He goes, is he any good? So I knew he was going to ask that. So I put together highlights, I put something, and he came back and had a look and he said, yeah, he looks good. He looks good. So we were able to get him. But that's the important thing is, again, I just bring up there's business, but there's relationships and there's trust. And you build that trust. It's like now I've got absolutely, I've got a lot of Irish people there. Kev Geary, head of, I don't know how Ulster didn't let this guy go. This guy is world class. He's our head of athletic performance. Rory Murray, again from Ulster, world class, best physio I've ever seen. Head of our medical. Connor McPhillis is my assistant coach. Him and John Muldoon, they're growing unbelievable. And one day I can see them coming back, and hopefully both of them will go and work in Connacht. But I can see I'm growing them to eventually all go back to Ireland and put some stuff, put some time back there. But they're world-class people. And that's what I need. So while they trust me, I now trust all of these guys around me to get their jobs done. So Connor works with me with Team Attack. and which allows me to do stuff as well. So I might oversee it. He gets stuff there. John Muldoon was working with me at team defence, and now I've given him. He's done a great job of now moving to forwards coach to grow him to go into become a head coach as well. And but now I've got awesome trust, and our alignment with our medical, our S&C, and our coaching. Kyle Sinclair came in yesterday and he said, "Man, I've never been in a team where the alignment is so good." And I said, "Yeah, that's because these guys are world class, so there's a lot of trust."
Look, it's brilliant that you're doing so much for Irish rugby still, and I have a strong sense that the fans of all of the Irish teams are going to be keeping a very close eye on Bristol's fortunes for the rest of the year. It's always brilliant talking to you, Pat. Inspirational in many ways. Thanks a million for joining us.
Pleasure. Gura Margaret.
Nahabare. That's Pat Lam. Dave, I can see why players are willing to run through brick walls for Pat Lam.
I'm about to run through a brick wall right in front of me here, Joe. Well, it's more plasterboard, so even I could probably get through it if I had to, but he's just an incredible man to listen to. And it would really surprise him if we don't see him in a head coaching role with a top-tier Test nation at some stage. I know from the way he's been speaking there, he's very much talking in the long term at Ashton Gate. It looks like he's settled into Bristol and has ambitions of them winning a European Cup someday. And that's not going to happen this season, probably wouldn't happen next season, but it's definitely something that could happen in the next 2 or 3 years. But there are going to be some very high-profile top-tier jobs coming up in the next 3 years, particularly after the end of this World Cup cycle. I'd be surprised if Pat Lam isn't highly sought after for a number of those. He's already said he'd love to coach internationally at some stage, and he even alluded to there his ambitions to coach the All Blacks someday. Well, he's certainly on the right track, isn't he?
Yeah, 100%. That bit at the end there, it seems so kind of throwaway about where Sinclair comes in and says that the medical and the S&C and the physio are all aligned. I know of stories in the NFL where there was rivalries between different departments where players would be being past fit by the medical, but the S&C would be like, well, they're not match fit. And actually having them all work together, which seems like the most obvious thing in the world, because they seem on the outside, when you don't know that much about sports science, to be, well, these are actually the same thing, aren't they? And it turns out like medical and strength and conditioning and physio are all elements of the same part, but slightly different. And it's a simple thing, but even just hearing him say that we've got that already aligned, you would assume that somebody with his vision has been able to do that, but I think a lot of teams don't actually manage to do that. So, look, a future Ireland coach, like, certainly would be somebody who is in the mix. There is this assumption in Ireland that you have to be part of the system, and that has certainly been how things have worked. But, like, would anybody in Ireland be disappointed to see Pat Lam as our coach? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, well, part of the system in that, Joe Schmidt was part of the system at provincial level and then he went on, but there doesn't have to be a direct line. It doesn't have to be linear, does it? Pat Lam was part of the system. He left. There's no reason why he can't come back and move into the system again and it be the head coaching job with Ireland. It doesn't necessarily have to go from provincial to the Irish setup in that way.
I think it does. I think Nucifora is kind of on the record as saying that, we would only ever appoint a coach. And look, you make your rules, but you break your rules under the certain circumstances. If after Andy Farrell wins the World Cup for Ireland and he wants to go off and retire, and then Pat Lam comes in, I don't think if the IRFU were to break the rules for that, then I don't think anybody would be too disappointed. But look, it's just good to know that the other lads who have gone over from around Ireland who are working in Bristol are also getting on well too.
Yeah, it does. Look, I think you could spin it in a way that you need to spin it, Jerry. If Pat Lam had declared himself available for the Irish job in 4 or 5 years' time, and the figure was being pointed at David Nucifora saying, well, look, he's not come through the system. I'm sure Mr. Nucifora could find a way to deliver that news if necessary by pointing at the Connacht situation. Yeah. He's won a Pro 12 championship with an Irish province. For me, that ticks any box that needs to be ticked. Well, obviously, we're speaking in major hypotheticals here, but it's good fun as well.
Oh, totally. Right, let's get to the sports pages next.